So here's the ornament that I'm going to show you today that we're going to make. It's a really pretty red, white, and blue Americana style ornament. It's got a cute little bow and the charm. That'd be great on your red, white, and blue Christmas tree or to honor a veteran. But here's another example of one that you can make with the same pattern. It just has the shimmery silver ribbon. Just another example of how you can use this pattern. Two very different ornaments, both beautiful. Before we add any fabric to our ball, we need to prep it by making these lines. This is one of the ways we keep all the layers straight and both sides symmetrical. The smooth styrofoam ball that comes with your kit has a hole on one pole and a demarcation on the other. I'm going to color in that demarcation just to make it easier to see on the video. The ball also will have a raised equator line that you can see I colored in there too, so you can see it. Take a pin and place it anywhere you like on that equator line. Push it in the ball just about halfway so it's sticking up. And then position your ball so that the hole is left to the pin. That's where we're going to make our line. Take your soft measuring tape, put it halfway up through that hole horizontally, and put a pin right through the tape to hold it there. Now you're going to run that tape horizontally under the pin that you put on the equator line, and then pin that measuring tape about halfway up through the demarcation on the other side. Now your tape measure makes a nice horizontal edge that we can draw our line on. So use your pen, make a line right along the top edge of that measuring tape. You take the pins out, half your ball will be finished, and then we do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so some basic tools you'll need to craft these ornaments are a soft measuring tape, a pair of good fabric scissors, a metal thimble, a pencil, and a ruler. To make this 3-layer ornament, you need 8 pieces, 8 rectangles of the white fabric, 16 rectangles of the red fabric, and 16 rectangles of the coordinating ribbon, plus a 10-inch band that goes around the outside of the ball. You'll need some ribbons for the bow, a decorative pin, satin pins, and your styrofoam ball. When you order a kit off of my website, those are all the materials that you would receive. In addition to the directions with all of the pictures and instructions, and then also obviously access to this YouTube video. Okay, before I go any further, let's talk real quick about the dimensions of the fabric pieces, because that's something that people always ask me. My ornament balls are made with a styrofoam ball that's 2.5 inches. Versus the 3-inch balls that people usually make these ornaments with. I just like the way the 2.5-inch ball looks, and that's the size of the ball that comes with kits when people order them. So anyway, that's why I tend to not give you the dimensions of the fabric squares, because they're a little bit different than what people usually use. But for my ornaments, my fabric rectangles are 2.5 inches by 1.5 inch. And the ribbon rectangles are 1.25 inches instead of 1.5. So those are 2.5 inches by 1.25 for the ribbons, 2.5 inches by 1.5 for the fabric. Hope that made sense and helped you out. All right, let's get going with our layer number 1. You're going to position your rectangle horizontally, fold down the top by about 1/4 inch, and then fold your rectangle in half like a book. Press those creases so you can find the center easily. You're going to place your pin just a little bit below the top on that crease, and then pin your rectangle right there in the middle where those 2 lines cross. When you prepped your ball, you're going to fold down the top right corner and the top left corner down to the center, and it'll line up with the line on your ball, so it's nice and straight. pin those overlapping corners at the bottom right there on the line. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Take another piece of your rectangle fabric, fold it down about 1/4 inch at the top, and then fold your rectangle in half like a book. Press those creases real well. Place a pin just under the top crease in the center. Pin it almost right on top of the point of the other triangle. Make sure it lines up. Top right corner is folded down. Top left corner is folded down with a tiny bit of overlapping. Take a pin and pin those down right in the center on the line. Now you've got 2 pieces. They're all lined up really nicely. And we're going to put 2 more to finish the first layer. Okay, now that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces on there, they're all lined up in this with the center line. We have to overlap the bottom corners of the triangles and pin those in place. Just move around to do all 4 corners. Okay, now it's time to add the second layer. We're going to add these red rectangles to our ball. I'm going to fold them down about 1/4 inch from the top edge and fold them in half like a book, just like we did the last time. Place the pin just a little bit under the edge there, the top edge on the center crease. And we're going to use our soft measuring tape to measure from the center point on the ball about 3/8 of an inch for the point of our triangle on the second layer, 3/8 of an inch from the center point. You're going to fold down the top right corner and the top left corner, overlap just a little bit. Make sure they're lining up with your line on your ball and pin the bottom corners right in the middle on that line. You're pinning right over top of the other fabric that you used for layer 1. We're going to do the same technique, 3/8 of an inch from the center point all the way around. All right, we've got the first 4 pieces added. Now it's time to pin down the overlapping corners of the triangles all the way around. Okay, now it's time to place pieces 5 through 8 of the second layer. And you guessed it, we're going to do this the exact same way that we did all the other pieces. Folding the top edge down about 1/4 inch and then folding our rectangle in half like a book. We're gonna place the pin about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the folded fabric, and then we're using our soft measuring tape, lining everything up with all the other lines on our ball. The point of that triangle needs to be just like the first 4, 3/8 of an inch from the center point on the ball. You know it's lined up well when that center line is evenly between the other 2 lines on the ball. And we're going to just keep adding the last 3 pieces of red fabric in the exact same way. Place it 3/8 of an inch from the center. When you fold the corners down, the line you make with the fabric needs to be centered between the 2 lines that you drew on your ball. Everything will be nice and straight that way. When you're placing the pin on your fabric rectangle, you need it to be about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. If you're noticing that the silver pin head is showing through when you fold down your corners, that means that you're placing the pin too close to the edge of the fabric. You need a little bit of fabric there to cover it up when you fold down your corners. You don't want it to be too far down away from the edge because then the fabric will get really thick at the point, but you need it far enough so that it's going to get covered up when you fold the corners down. Okay, here comes the last piece of layer number 2. Okay, time to pin down the overlapping corners of the triangles. Next up is layer number 3. I use this pretty wire-edged ribbon for this layer. You take the wire out of the edge so it's more flexible, and we do it the same way, but instead of folding down the top edge, you saw that I didn't do that. I just folded in half like a book and placed the pin in the center there just below the edge of the ribbon. And then this piece is going to be 1/2 inch from the point of layer number 2. So use your soft measuring tape. See how it lines up there with that line? Nice and straight. Soft measuring tape from the point of your red triangle, 1/2 inch to the point of the 3rd layer. So you fold it in half and you put that pin right there below the edge of the ribbon, but still in a place where it's not going to pull through when you go to pin it on the ball. 1/2 inch from the point of the red triangle. Sometimes it's a little hard to get that pin in. That's why we use the metal thimble to save your fingers. Line it up, pin it down in the center. I'm going to do that for the first 4 pieces of layer number 3. Okay, now it is time to pin down the overlapping triangles. Sometimes those corners of the triangles don't overlap quite enough to get one pin in there, and that's okay. You just put 2 pins in, one for one side and one for the other side, and that's okay. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. Now we need piece 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're going to do it the same way as we did the first 4 pieces of layer 3. We're going to place the pieces 1/2 inch from the points of layer number 2. From those red triangle points, we're going to go 1/2 inch down to pin pieces 5 through 8 of layer number 3. Make sure you're lining up the pieces with all your other lines so everything is straight. All right, we've got layer number 3 down. That looks beautiful. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Okay, I have both sides finished, side 1 and side 2. They're lining up in the center here. We need to put that band over top of all these pins. If you have the little extra fabric there that's bothering you or making it bulky, you can snip that off with scissors down the center. Okay, so what you do is you take this band and you fold it in 3. Some people like to iron it to keep it nice and flat there. I just fold it as I go. Figure out which point you want to be the top when you're looking at your ornament. Once you decide on that, you just place that ribbon on the seam and use 2 pins to put it in place in the middle. And you're going to start wrapping that ribbon around the center of your ornament, keeping it folded in 3 all the way around. Make sure you pull it snug. Make sure you're covering up those little pins that you have on the bottoms of your triangles. And go all the way around. When we get back to the top, just overlap a little bit and put a couple more pins in the top there to hold your band in place. And you can use your scissors to trim any of that excess band right there. Alright, time to make the pretty bow that goes on top. You're going to need your thimble again, need your fabric scissors, need a ruler. I like to use the inch numbers. You need a decorative pin and ribbons for your bow. So you're going to take a skinny ribbon, because that's the one that we're going to use for the hanger. You're going to find the edge of it and place that decorative pin an eighth to a quarter inch from the end of that ribbon. Now put that against our ruler, measure out 5 inches of ribbon. We're going to loop it around so that it can make the hanger and place that pin at the 5-inch mark. Then we're going to measure out 2 inches from the decorative pin and place that pin right in the ribbon at the 2-inch mark. Gonna turn it over and do the exact same thing again. So now we've made 2 loops. We're kind of doing it like a fan, back and forth, like you would fan paper. And we're gonna do 2-inch loops. We're gonna make 6 of those, 3 on each side. So we've done 2 so far. Here comes the third one at the 2-inch mark. Flip it over and do another one. That's our 4th loop right there. Do it again. Make our 5th loop. And one more time for loop number 6. Then we're just going to trim it a little bit. And now we can spread out the loops to make it nice and pretty for the bow. You can also spread them out at the end after you have attached it to your ornament. Okay, so now we have our narrow ribbon bow, and I'm going to add a second layer with this red, white, and blue ribbon. A little thicker. Again, I'm going to put the pin through about a 1/4 inch from the end. And this time I'm going to measure out 2.5 inches and use the same technique. Pin it at the 2.5 inch mark to make a loop. Flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. 2.5 inches, place a pin right there, flip it over. Gonna make the third loop 2.5 inches. We're gonna keep doing that 6 to 8 times so that we have some pretty loops on the bottom of our bow. Alright, I've got all our loops. I'm gonna trim the end of this ribbon. I'm gonna spread out the loops a little bit, and there you have it. We're going to pin that right in the top where we attached our band, right there in the center. There we go. So pretty. You can move them around however you like. They're pretty tight in there. And you know, this is it's got a lot of fabric and a lot of ribbons, so it's pretty tight in there. You could leave it like this, but I'm kind of neurotic about it, and I don't ever want that bow to come out after years of hanging. So I lift up and put glue right there underneath of my bow. I use hot glue and just stick some glue under there. Now we're going to put a little bow in the center to make it more decorative. Okay, to add that little decorative bow, I'm just using 2 white pearl head pins and this skinny navy blue ribbon. And all I'm doing with this navy blue ribbon is making a little bow, just like as if you're tying your sneakers. You get better at this over the years, but just kind of pulling it to its small little loops, and then I make it tighter and pull it again. Put that pin right through the center of the bow, and then pin it right in the middle of that white star. Gotta use that metal thimble there. Some thick ribbon. Okay, now we just need to trim the bottoms of the bow. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now I just want to add a little something extra to this ornament. I have these pretty patriotic pins. They're in the shape of a star. They have the flag on them. You just need your charm, you need a little skinny ribbon, and one of those satin pins. Now it's pretty hard to get the ribbon through the hole. so it just doesn't fit very well. So what I do is I use that satin pin, I just put it on the end of the ribbon, stick the pin through, and it just pulls that ribbon right through, kind of like threading a needle. Then you decide how long you want the charm to be, how far down do you want it to dangle. I like it about there. And you just place your satin pin through those ribbons. Sometimes I'll tie a knot in there to make it even more secure and then put the pin through the knot. Trim the ends, and you can use a lighter to singe the ends of those ribbons too to keep them from fraying if you want. And then we just lift up the bow layers and pin that ribbon down right underneath the bow. It's kind of hidden in there. You can add a little glue to that if you're worried about it. And there it is. Pretty little charm on our patriotic ornament. I hope you've enjoyed the video and it helped you make your own beautiful ornament. If you want to purchase a kit, I have this ornament kit and many others on my website, Peace, Love, and Ornaments, to get all the pre-cut materials you need and everything to make your own ornament. Thanks for watching!